All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Liz Eggleston, and I run Course Report, which is a resource for students who are choosing a coding bootcamp or a data science bootcamp. If you haven't looked at Course Report yet, this is our one shameless plug. We do it in all of our videos. You can use our directory to find schools that fit your learning style. You can check out our blog for a lot of interviews with students and instructors and founders at bootcamps around the world. Plus, we've got application tips and virtual classroom tours like this one. So throughout 2020, we've been sharing virtual classroom tours of online coding boot camps and data science boot camps around the world so that you can get a better sense of the learning style, the learning experience as you're doing your research. So today, Roberto Rafe from Metis is here to walk us through the Metis online classroom. Thanks for being here, Roberto.
Thank you, Liz. I'm excited to be here.
So as you know, a lot of bootcamps are moving online in 2020, and Metis has announced that they've moved completely online permanently. So Roberto is going to walk us through why Metis decided to transition entirely to remote learning. He's also going to share his screen to give us a tour of the Metis online classroom. And I've got some questions for him as well about Metis's new boot camps in machine learning and data engineering and data analysis. So Roberto, thank you so much for being here. I have a ton of questions for you, but I want to start off by asking how you got into tech. So how did you get to data science? Did you take like a traditional path here?
So this is a great question, Liz. So, well, into tech, my background is in engineering. So I studied electronics engineering and biomedical engineering. And I just worked in a wide range of fields, from academic institutions, large corporations like Microsoft, and quite a few startups. So that's how I got into tech, but specifically into data science. I was doing a postdoc after my PhD and decided to take a course online about machine learning, with low expectations that I wasn't going to understand much about it. But to my surprise, after the first lesson, I kind of said, oh, wow, I understood about 80% of what was taught. So that kept me going all the way through the end of the course. What was interesting is that I was able to apply a lot of the concepts that I learned into my day-to-day life at that time, and ended up creating quite a few publications that involved utilizing linear regression models, support vector machines, principal component analysis. All these were new topics that I was just learning, and slowly I decided to rebrand myself as a data scientist.
Sorry, I was muted. And what kind of brought you into teaching? Why are you an instructor now?
Well, I was always very interested in being in academia, and there's some challenges in doing the classical academic path in a university. Metis actually, when they came to Seattle, which is where I live, they had kind of this combination of you can teach, which is one of the things I was very interested in doing, but at the same time you're working with students sort of as a mentor, as a consultant, helping them develop their projects and helping them transition from, beginner students all the way to being able to get jobs in the field. And that was extremely exciting for me.
Cool. So in 2019, you're in Seattle now, and last year, Metis had classrooms in Seattle, New York City, San Francisco, all over the country. Why has Metis decided to completely transition to remote learning in 2020, and how's it going?
Yeah, so this has been a decision that we've made since last year, that we decided to make our move to online. We actually launched our first online bootcamp on January of 2020. This is before COVID. And by the time COVID hit, it was relatively easy for us to transition all our physical campuses to online. And what we learned is that the student satisfaction in the online version was as high as ever, with high NPS scores and so on. So that just accelerated our decision to move all our in-person campuses to online. And really the thought process is that number one, we can reach a broader population of students where it is convenient for them, not only limited to the cities where we had campuses. The other thing is now we have access to students all over the world, and they have access to each other, which is one of the things that the students have been craving for. And one of the trends we had been seeing pre-COVID, but it just got accelerated with COVID, is that online is how many jobs will be in the future. So we are just preparing them to work on remote settings, to interact with people that are all over the place. And people need to figure out how to do that well and efficiently, because that's how most of the jobs are going to be in the next few years.
Yeah, I love that point. I think even if someone is, a little bit cautious about, working remotely and doesn't think that they can do it, a remote boot camp is like a perfect on-ramp into working remotely, because you are learning how to collaborate and, do projects and build products remotely, but in an academic setting, which is a little bit maybe less pressure than your first job. That's really cool. Okay, so now Metis is completely online. Obviously, we are in, we're in November of 2020, pretty unpredictable time, but Metis is actually launching new boot camps right now in machine learning, data engineering, and data analytics, right? Did I have those right?
Almost, but I'll
okay. Well, tell us about those new launches, and why now? Why mid 2020 to launch new boot camps?
Yeah. So this is one of the things I'm mostly excited about. What we've been doing for the last few years is kind of, talking with incoming students, talking with our alums, talking with our hiring partners, and trying to understand where the new trends are. What we've discovered is that for every individual student, there is no, one size fits all. So students come into the programs with very different needs and requirements. So for example, some students want to do the latest cutting edge technology in deep learning. Other students are more interested in solving more classical data analytics business problems. So in response to this, what we've decided to do is we have created 7 2-week short immersive courses. And each of these courses touches on a specific topic within the field. For example, we have a course in exploratory data analysis, a course in regression models and web scraping, a course in classification, deep learning, and so on. And depending on the combination of the courses that you take, we are providing a specific certificate in a bootcamp that ranges from data analytics, data science and engineering, and data science and machine learning. In addition to this, we noticed that students have different sensitivities to the duration of the program and the cost of the program. So these boot camps, we start from the data analytics that is 6 weeks in duration and starts at $9,000, all the way to the data science and machine learning, which is 14 weeks in duration, and it goes for $18,500. And we will offer scholarships for women and underrepresented groups in techs and so on. So really, this is a response to understanding that our students have very different goals and how we can satisfy those different goals.
And these will be like career-changing classes, right?
We have 2 options here. So students can take just the 2-week short immersive course. So we have 7 of those. And those you can take as standalones. In addition, if you stitch them together, you have quite a few of them, then we give you the bootcamp certificate. And that bootcamp certificate is tied with a careers advisory team. So you work with a careers team. They're going to help you with workshops about how to build your LinkedIn profile, your resume, how to network, how to negotiate salaries, and so on. And they work with you, from the moment you start the boot camp. At the end of the boot camp, we have a 1-week intensive period that you're working with a careers team, going through mock interviews, and they support you all the way until you get hired.
That is really cool. Okay, thank you for clearing that up. I feel like in data science, as I talk to tons of alumni from Metis and other data science boot camps, it does seem like that kind of specialization is important in data science, going into, machine learning or even data analytics or data engineering. And all of those jobs are actually pretty different, even if they're, rooted in the same skill set. So that's really cool that y'all are kind of offering those as complete boot camps. That's really neat. So, okay, so in the last year, I know you worked with students in person before 2020, and now, of course, you've been working with them online. Have you noticed something in the last 6 or 8 months as, students have really been transitioning to remote learning? Have you noticed something that stood out that your most successful students have done that you can share with our readers who may be beginners?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference from the successful students in person and online, I believe, is the students who create community, the ones who know how to reach beyond their living rooms into the online space and collaborate with others. So one of the challenges that people have is when you get hired by a company, you're not necessarily getting hired by what you know. You're getting hired by your ability to solve problems, whether you know how to solve them right now or not. And the people who can, reach beyond their living rooms, really interact with the community and find ways of being self-reliant by looking for answers from others or Googling answers, working with Stack Overflow, etc. Those are the ones that tend to succeed. So that's specifically for online. And in general, for a bootcamp, I think that the most successful students are the ones who have grit, because this field is a science. So you really don't know. You're experimenting and trying different things out. And you're going to fail many, many times. But as long as you keep powering through, you will be able to succeed at the end. And that ability of not giving up is one of the biggest assets that students can have.
And so are y'all looking for that kind of ability to create community in the admissions process now? Is that something that a prospective student should be prepared to kind of show that they're able to do?
Well, that's definitely one component. It's not the only component that we look for. What we're definitely looking is for the potential in the student. It's not so much what they have coming in. I mean, there are some minimum requirements, like they need to be able to program in Python and have some basic math skills in calculus, inner algebra, etc. But it's also seeing their ability to be able to succeed and to grow within the program.
Okay, that makes sense. So there are some things about a bootcamp that seem kind of like they have to be in person. I'll put that in quotes now, but doing your demo day or career networking, those types of opportunities. How has the change, the transition online, how has that changed how y'all approach those very community-based events?
Yeah. So, Metis has been around for quite a few years now. And there are kind of two aspects to how we teach our bootcamp. One component is an area that we're constantly improving. So the program, at the end of every bootcamp, we do a postmortem. We analyze what went well, what could be improved, and we're constantly iterating. So if you look at the bootcamp a few years ago and what we teach today, there has been quite a few significant changes for the better. So this includes with online as well. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, you have the core components of our bootcamp, and those are the things that we have validated that they work, and these are not being modified. Examples of this include we have a project-based curriculum. So basically, students get lessons in the morning, they learn about some theoretical concepts or some algorithms or some tools, and then they're applying this on a project that same afternoon. So they're basically, flying an airplane while they're building it at the same time, but that's part of the learning process. We also focus a lot on presentation and storytelling skills. We have, since the beginning, had guest speakers where we have people from industry come to Metis and talk to our students about what it's like to work at their company or their hiring process things like that. And we also have, and I'm going to, when I share my screen, I'm going to walk through this. We have what we call the graduate directory. So this is on our website, and people, the students can kind of self-promote by having a brief bio about themselves, about a project, and we share this graduate directory with over 500 hiring partners that we work with.
Very cool. So you mentioned sharing your screen. Could you go ahead and do that and show us what the actual remote classroom looks like at Metis?
Yeah, of course. Here, let me see. All right, so I've put together a little bit of a slide deck that walks us through what it's like to go through a day at the boot camp. So the first thing is students have access to a Google Calendar. And within this calendar, they have basically an hourly breakdown of what happens throughout the day. So I'm actually going to walk you through what each one of these blocks talks about. So we start first thing in the morning, and students have what we call a pair problem. So within a pair problem, we put students in groups of 2, and we give them a challenge that they have about 45 minutes to solve. And these challenges serve one of 3 purposes. They can be a setup for the lecture of the day, so kind of a startup for that lecture. It could be a review of a lecture that happened a few days ago, or it could be a typical interview practice problem. So students work through that, and here's an example of a pair problem. So it says write a function that, so it's very clear what we're asking them to do, and then it has some descriptions of what that function is supposed to do. It shows some test cases of what you need to get as results. And then at the end of that pair problem, of those 45 minutes or so, the instructors bring the students back together, and then the students share their solutions, they discuss them, and then the instructors might share some more efficient solutions that the students might not have thought about. Following that, we have about 2 hours of lectures every day. And these lectures can be in many forms. They can be PowerPoints, they can be sort of whiteboarding on the computer, they can be labs like Jupyter Notebooks, they can be like SQL, they can be new tools like Tableau, and so on. So this is an example of what the classroom looks like. This is utilizing Zoom. And you see here in the middle, the instructor sharing a PowerPoint slide deck. This specific lecture is on support vector machines. And then on the right, you can see all the students in your classroom and the instructor. Parallel to this, students have access to a Slack workspace. And within this workspace, you have a bunch of channels that you can see here. I'm just going to highlight a few of them. But you have a lecture questions channel, so students can ask questions about the lecture as it's happening, or they can just ask the instructor verbally via Zoom. And notice that people reply to these questions, and it could be your peers, it could be the instructor, or it can be the teaching assistant. So that creates a lot of community and a good learning environment. Another example, we have a careers channel. So the careers team is constantly sharing resources with the students. In this example, they're sharing an article with 120 data science interview questions and answers that students should know. So it's all about preparing them. And you can see a bunch of other fun channels, like we have a pets channel where people are sharing, pictures of their pets and so on. Later in the day, we have a 1 hour break. Students can go have lunch. We also enable breakout rooms. So if you don't want to have lunch by yourself, but you want to kind of socialize, we enable those types of environments. Following that, depending on the day of the week, students have assessments. So these are basically quizzes where we probe and test them on different topics. And here's an example of an assessment where we're asking students a question about building a model that has fraudulent transactions and what metric is the most appropriate, and so on. And then in the afternoon, this is the project time where students work on their own projects. They start applying the concepts that they learn in the morning. Some students prefer to work on their own. Other students like to be on breakout rooms and being in the same room with other students and interacting and socializing and asking questions. And in parallel to this, we have one-on-ones with instructors and TAs. So students can sign up using the calendar for, you know, a slot with an instructor and TA, and kind of, you know, talk about how their project is going and getting feedback and so on. So here's an example of a one-on-one with an instructor. So you can be on a room by yourself with the instructor and kind of talking about your project, or you can go into a breakout room where you have just a few of your students and peers there just talking about a specific project or working together if they prefer to socialize. And depending on the day, we have guest speakers that are invited to come. So these are people from industry that come and talk to our students about different topics, you know, that have to do with data science. And the last thing I wanted to touch on was this graduate student directory. So we have this on our website. So you can see here on the top right is the website where you can find it. But these are just a few examples. So here on the right, we have a student. Her name is Selena Plaza. She did a project on COVID-19 impact on car accidents in the US, and she has kind of a brief description of what that project is about. So you can read about it. You can also click on this view project. So this is about a 5-minute video of her walking us through that project. And then you have information about her bio, resume, LinkedIn, GitHub, etc. And as I mentioned earlier, this is shared with 500 plus hiring partners that we work with.
So what has been the biggest difference between online and in-person at Metis for you? Or maybe you've heard this from students.
Yeah, you know, for me specifically, or for my team, is trying to learn how to deliver lessons online versus in person, which is a different ballgame. Even if you're teaching the same topics, the way you communicate with students and so on is different. One of the benefits we have at Metis is we have a parent company called Kaplan. And within Kaplan, we have a team that is called the Learning Sciences team. And all their focus is on understanding how students learn in any setting, whether it's in person or online. So we have been working closely with them and getting the best practices and literally the cutting edge research, because this is a new field of how people learn online and how do you utilize tools that exist today in an online setting. So as an example, you know, we use Zoom, and Zoom allows you to use functionalities such as polling. These are things we didn't use in person. So we can teach students some concepts and have them respond to some polls and kind of reinforce the learning that they have. We can also create quick breakout rooms where we can have them move into smaller groups and work on a challenge or have a discussion on a specific topic. So that's really, you know, the areas that we have been focusing on in the last few months is how do we get the best practices from the Learning Sciences team on how to teach online more effectively.
And what is your teaching style? Like, I'm kind of curious how your teaching style has maybe had to change as you've moved to remote teaching. Do you feel like you can really have like an individualized teaching style as a remote instructor?
Yeah, it's a great question. So really, there are two topics that I've learned a lot recently, and I'm trying to implement more and more. And I know a lot of our Metis instructors are focusing on this as well. One is the concept of chunking, and what this means is, let's say you have a 2-hour, 1-hour lesson, and you break this down into 5 to 15-minute chunks. And after you cover a specific topic, a specific learning objective, and as soon as you cover that, then you take a little pause and you test for it. So you can maybe use polling functionalities, maybe you can ask questions for the students, or have them go into breakout rooms to discuss what has been learned in that small chunk. So we create a lot of that through the curriculum. The other thing we have been doing is the concept of repeatability. So there has been a lot of studies that say, well, imagine you have two extreme set of students, one that studies and crams for a test the night before and hasn't done anything beyond that. And the other is the student that has, you know, throughout the semester or quarter, you know, been studying and sleeping and studying. And what's interesting is both can do fairly well in the test the next day, But after a few days after the test, the person who crammed everything at the last minute is going to forget most of it, while the person who has been consistently studying is going to be able to retain things more. So what we have done is modified our curriculum and enabled that ability that we teach a concept, let's say on Monday, and then on Wednesday we kind of have, we touch on that topic again, and we have a little bit of a review and tie it together with everything else. And maybe on Friday we do the same thing. So we're constantly utilizing this repeatability and allowing people to sleep over these concepts and allowing them and supporting them in moving this new knowledge from the short-term memory into the long-term memory.
That's nice that you're kind of building that consistency into the curriculum, because some people may be great online learners and others may, it may not come super naturally, but when it's like actually built into the curriculum, I feel like it becomes kind of evens the playing field. That's really neat. Well, okay, so boot camps are obviously interesting because people are getting jobs after they graduate, and Metis has a great history of getting students jobs as data scientists, obviously. But so you mentioned the graduate directory, but are students landing jobs right now, especially during this economy and during the pandemic? What are you seeing in 2020?
Great question. So in March, we saw companies go through hiring freeze. I think this is across the board, not specifically to data scientists or bootcamp students, but we did see a lot of our students that they were in the middle of great interview processes, and those got put on hold for a period of time. I think as the world kind of figured out how to work remotely, what the new normal is with the pandemic and so on, they started reopening their hiring practices. And in the summer, we started noticing an uptick of people, of our students getting hired. And one of the great challenges we have had in the last cohort is that when students graduate, we hire some of them to be teaching assistants in the next cohort while they're doing their job search. And our TAs have been getting hired so quickly that we have been constantly hiring new TAs and onboarding them. An example of this, we had a student, her name is Antera Kennedy. She was an optician who was let go from her job in April due to the COVID situation. She joined our summer boot camp. We hired her as a TA for the fall boot camp. And within a few weeks of hiring her as a TA, she said, well, I just got a job as a data scientist at CarMax, where she's currently working. And that experience is not unique. This is kind of the average of what we're seeing across the board with our students.
That's a good problem to have.
It's a great problem to have. I absolutely love it. And, to add to this, our careers team has been very in tune to the new normal, and they've revamped older workshops to include things like, not only how to do a job search, but how to do a job search during a pandemic, having like best practices that apply to that.
And what's the best advice that you've heard, maybe from the careers team or even from like a student or another instructor, about how to get a data science job and navigate that process after you graduate from a remote boot camp?
Yeah, I mean, the idea is that the students need to work with the careers team. They have seen it all. We have over 1,100 alums that have graduated from our program, and the careers team have supported each and every one of those students in how to get jobs. They've seen it all. So whatever an alum is going through in their job search, the best advice is to work with the careers team, share where they are, and take that advice. The other part I would say is the paid forward part. So students come through the boot camp, they work really, really hard and learn a bunch of new stuff. Some things they can, some challenges they were able to Google and find an answer right there. Other challenges was a big a search that they had to do and figure out how to put things together. So when you do that, share that knowledge with other people, maybe write blogs or GitHub, and this makes you become part of the community. You're slowly going to become an expert, and you're paying it forward for the next person who's trying to solve a similar problem as you have. And employers see this extremely favorable as a person that is part of the community and is helping others.
That is really good advice. It also kind of is consistent with the same thing that you're looking for in students, which is like the ability to, build community outside of themselves, and that just extends into the career search as well. So you mentioned the woman who was an optometrist or an optician and was laid off and made her way to Metis. Are you seeing that kind of influx in demand from folks who have lost their jobs in those in-person or service industries right now? Is that something that's really visible at Metis?
Well, historically, we have had students from a wide range of backgrounds. So it's not unique to what's happening right now with the pandemic. We have students that come from the typical STEM backgrounds, but we have also had students that have been baristas or minor league baseball players or musicians, artists, and so on. Now, all the students come with a wide range of skills coming in, and they graduate, with more skills and new skills. Now, to get into the bootcamp, we expect students to have a minimum technical ability in Python and math. Some students already have that technical ability, so they just apply. We have them do a technical assessment and an interview, and then they get into the program. Other students might not have that background, or maybe they need a refresher. Like a lot of students say, hey, I took calculus back in college, I don't remember any of it. So we offer what we call our bootcamp prep courses. These are courses that happen very frequently. Every few weeks, we launch a new course. They're all on our website, and people can sign up, get all the skills that they need or a refresher of what they need in Python and math. And then they can apply to the bootcamp. And if they enroll in the bootcamp, we roll the cost of that course into the bootcamp. So they technically end up not paying for it.
That is fantastic advice, especially for folks that aren't coming necessarily from that typical STEM background, which I think is a lot of people right now. Okay, so final question, Roberto. I want to ask you the number one question that we get asked most often this year. Why is right now the best time for someone to make a career change into data science? Why should we do a boot camp right now?
Great. So the first question a student needs to answer is, are they interested in the field? Do they want to work with data? Just jumping into a field that is very exciting, if you don't have the interest, is not going to serve you very well. However, if you do have the interest, you like working with data, this is one of the hottest jobs out there. As an example, LinkedIn recently released their 2020 Emerging Jobs Report, which you can look it up, and they talk about artificial intelligence specialists. They project a 74% annual growth, or data scientists a 37% annual growth, or data engineer a 33% annual growth. So the demand is high, and it's going to continue to grow. One of the great things is that data is everywhere. So every company, whether it's a bricks and mortars company or the top companies that are out there, they all work with data. The jobs are becoming more and more remote, so that means you can literally be located anywhere. The mission of Metis is we enable people to find value in data. So that's really where our passion lies. And when we talk with students, incoming students are always a little bit fearful if they're ready to do the bootcamp, if they have all the skills. But when we talk with our students after they graduate and they land their job, usually their feedback is they wish that they had started sooner. And to me, that's kind of the key message. If you're considering a transition, try to start sooner rather than later. You're never going to be perfectly prepared, but the ability of having that grit to power through is what's going to make you very successful.
All right, so start sooner rather than later, engage with the careers team, and be prepared to build community even if you're learning online. I think that's great advice. So I think that's a great place to end. Thank you so much, Roberto, for joining us and walking through the Metis online classroom. That was a great tour. And I feel like you shared such great advice for anyone who's going through an online boot camp. And to everyone who's watching this now, thank you for joining as always, and let us know in the comments which boot camp you'd like to see a virtual tour of next. See you on the next one.
Bye, thanks.